Trinidad and Tobago. Get ready for a musical explosion of freedom, culture, and pure steel band magic.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus their talented youth bands.
Get ready for generations of steel.
The ultimate celebration of our national instrument.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus their talented youth band.
Experience the power and passion of Desperados,
Shell Invaders,
Massey Trinidad All-Stars,
First Citizens Supernovas,
and the pride of the South, Fun Play. Saturday, July 11th
at the iconic Grandstand, Queen's Park, Savannah.
And hear this one. First 800 tickets sold. Admit 2 buses on 1 ticket if bought by Saturday, June 27th.
Presented by Super Panman, Dingleston and Friends.
Supported by CCNTV 6, The Express Newspaper, and I-95.5 FM.
Generations of Steel, the biggest pan event after Panorama.
So once your sugar is not controlled, it causes changes in the blood vessels in the back of your eyes. It basically makes your blood vessels more leaky. And it happens on a stage process where the smaller molecules start to leak, then the intermediate, and then the larger ones. Larger means we have come to a bleed.
Money is something we all deal with, but how many of us truly understand it? What if you could make better decisions with your money? Decisions that secure your future, protect your family, and bring you peace of mind. I'm Darren Jacobs, and I'm here to help you make sense of your dollars. Welcome to Dollars and Cents, the show that breaks down the financial world in ways that matter to you. No jargon, no confusion, just real conversations about money, your money. So join me every Wednesday at 10 a.m. on WESN for Dollars and Cents.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
WESN.
Yesterday, someone had a interesting comment to make. So it's not that I haven't had this before, but perhaps I should delve deeper into the commentary on the reasoning why it seems as though, for some people, I am biased against whatever it is they hold there. One of the interesting phenomenon, of course, is watching people, at times even people who are watching the very episode that they have called into. So it's now for now. Misinterpret what I say or take it from an angle that I don't intend. And then we ironically have a debate about what I intended, and I'm telling them what I intended and they disagree with how it came across, and it is what it is. And essentially that's whenever someone calls me a plant for any political party, that's essentially what it is. You know, it's not necessarily a misinterpretation of what I say insofar as how I'm framing the subject matter, my point of view, the facts of the case, the interpretation of said facts, the speculation to go beyond the facts within the realms of reason. And also, just want to point out in case I forget, the commenter did not explain why he disagreed with me, only that he did, which, as I've said before, is not particularly useful. But from my point of view, why I know or why I'm not concerned about such commentary is I get it from both sides. And at times I might get it from both sides within the same week. I'll rarely get it. I don't think I ever get it in the same day, but I'll get it within the same week. Because usually what tends to happen is one party has more bad press than the other party. So I'm not going to try to scrape together some negative story or stories in order to try to balance the scales. So I'm always criticizing both parties equally every day. That actually, in a way, would be very disingenuous. One, it'll be artificial. But then two, it runs the risk that what is the goal? To get to the truth or to try to placate people's feelings? To get to the truth or to try to serve some arbitrary master of fake balance? The balance comes in where not if the PNM does 50 bad things and the UNC does 10 bad things, I find 40 more things in order so it's 50-50. No, the balance comes in where I treat each situation the same. And if one party, if the current government does 100 bad things, I criticize them 100 times. Because when the previous government did 100 bad things, I criticized them 100 times. But it will never be equal because one side is in opposition. So when the PNM was in power, they got more things said about them. Now, to be honest, they did also get technically more positive things said about them, but while that potential is there, the reality declined over time as things got worse. So right now, we have a government and opposition. Opposition don't put out policies. Opposition has a very limited role, and I've criticized the operation for not executing that limited role. I've also basically pointed out to the fact that the opposition is not ready for an election. They need to get their house in order. Have they done so? That doesn't mean that the government, because the opposition is in a bad way, doesn't mean I have to support the government. What nonsense is this? Tell me, if there's two street gangs, do you automatically have to pick a side? Or criminals are wrong. That means we automatically have to believe in the police and everything they say. And every police officer is above reproach. And there's no room for criticism at all. Because if that's the case, technically speaking, why didn't we practice that with the last government? No, because we assume that our side is morally superior. That our chosen politicians, because we chose them, so in the genius of our intellect, we all obviously chose the morally superior side. That's why we chose them. But when you look at, and here's the thing, it's not as though individuals want to pick this fight with people who say, I don't know who to vote for. It's bad versus bad. I don't know who to vote for. It's the lesser of two evils. We don't really hear in the national conversation any good retorts to those statements. And again, doesn't have to be, I haven't specified a party, so it could be for either one. But you hear a large enough section of the population say these things, and it is relatively commonly held or believed to be true. You pick the lesser of two evils. If the loyalty, if blind loyalty, loyalty is not an issue, it's blind loyalty, persists because of the good feelings from one election campaign, I would argue that's a very cheap way to run your country. You're giving away your loyalty almost for free. And I'll be honest, I fell for the campaign slogans as well, at least enough that when the dust cleared in April 29th of 2025, I hope that there will be some positive improvements. And I think the root cause of this is not because there are people who are not engaged enough with politics or are unwilling or afraid to really consider things objectively. It's not because I'm inaccurate with what I say, and at times maybe I'm speculating too much, because in part my speculation tends to be within limited boundaries and for the most part is in line with whatever the truth ends up being. No, the issue is not how we act per se. To some extent, yes, there's human psychological blind spots at play. The issue is the fact, and I guess that is the key, we don't demand much of our politicians, in general. When you support a side, do you demand much of them? Do you have high expectations that you hold them to? Do you feel disappointment when those expectations are not met? Why not? We treat the political party that we choose to support like a spoiled child that could do no wrong. What happens when you raise a child that way? What happens when you don't discipline a child? What happens when you feed into a child's entitlement? Now, granted, all parents, of course, they have to figure it out as they go along. The parental tools and tricks of yesteryear isn't exactly going to work this year. And the tools of how we chose our politicians in the past in a similar manner are not necessarily going to work because the dynamics have changed, and of course the personalities have changed, and we've changed. But some fundamental human truths remain because human beings are still human beings. I have always said the politicians listen to us, at least to some degree. And if we show tolerance for nonsense, they'll do nonsense. And if we show tolerance for average work, they'll do average work. The same thing happens in America, by the way. What's interesting to note is there's two things that happens in Washington that on the surface, if you take away the geography, you would think I'm talking about Trinidad and Tobago as Trinbagonians. The first thing is that the public sector in Washington apparently does very little, if no work. You go to Washington, you get a high-paying job, you get a title, you don't actually do anything. You just collect a check. That is technically the problem that the US president was trying to solve. How effective he was at it, that could be debated. It's easy to just say that generally, then to actually identify the specific issues and treat with it, that's a different problem. Another thing that happens in Washington is the representatives, the congressmen and congresswomen, seemingly don't have that much time to represent. They spend a significant amount of their time fundraising for the next election. Apparently they have essentially large facilities with just cubicles and phones or offices with phones so that they could call prospective donors to ask for funds. They do some of the legwork themselves apparently. Now they probably call in the more hoity-toity richer people in their areas or maybe even nationally. But the point is, their job is not to represent the district that elected them to Congress. That's what their job is supposed to be and assumed to be. But their job seemingly is rarely, in practicality, raising funds and towing the party line in any debate. Because very rare do you see any sort of individual opinion shine through in the American Parliament, or legislature, sorry. And we see the same thing here. We have MPs who are supposed to be doing a job, but they don't actually do that job. They are far more concerned about party politics, whatever the party line is in Parliament, and I assume fundraising. And maybe some current government ministers might have gotten themselves in trouble with that last part. And who knows? And I'll just leave that one there. But are they actually representing you? Member of Parliament 4. We kind of forget that it's supposed to be 4. We know that the title, they'll use the title, which is, actually it harkens back ironically to the times of nobility because they were last names. Your last name was the area. The king of Jerusalem literally was Baldwin of Jerusalem. So in the movie Kingdom of Heaven, when Saladin's men say, Jerusalem has come, in part they literally mean the king of Jerusalem and his army. He has come. And I've always kind of sarcastically made references to the fact that it seems as though parliamentarians, particularly whoever's in cabinet at the time, operates as if they're feudal laws and their policies are more geared to appeasing the peasantry than governing a nation in the 21st century. Because when you get down to it, we have low standards for politicians. It is what it is. It's not that our politicians leveled up. It's that the rest of the world declined. Particularly what you see in the point of origin for our system of government, the United Kingdom. It's almost like if they can't have a prime minister retire normally. At this point, I'm not even sure, I don't think any within the last 5 years, obviously, has survived the full term. It's getting ridiculous how bad their politics and the corresponding policies are turning out to be. Now, we look at legislations being passed, legislations not passed. You look at the debates in the House. If you really delve deeper, and you could say the same thing about the PNM from before, by the way. What is there to be inspired about with the legislations that are put forward, with the work being done, with how our politicians carry themselves in the most sacred chambers of our democracy? Because if it's our side, we have low expectations. And the irony is, I don't even know if the Prime Minister is meeting what I would have assumed to be the bare minimums for her own areas. That's how I see it. When the PNM did similar things, I called it out. Am I not supposed to call it out now? Why do you disagree with me? If you don't actually have a reason to disagree with me, it unfortunately makes you out to be someone who is speaking about things they don't know anything about. If all you have is the emotional response of you're wrong and can't tell me why, then you come across as someone that doesn't have a clue. That is just speaking hot air off the top of their head because you don't like it. Objectivity is not about liking. You don't have to like someone to be objective. Whether I like Dr. Keith Rowley is irrelevant. When he put himself up to answer questions for the media, I like that. When he got argumentative with members of the media and evaded questions by a combination of roundabout speech and direct counterattacks, I hated that. The man and my personal feelings for him, for the job I do, is irrelevant. It's supposed to be irrelevant. I'm not supposed to like him or dislike him. Personal feelings for someone for the purposes of objectivity needs to be relevant. Parents who can't be objective on their own children spoil their children or ruin their children because it could go the other way. And it's not easy to be objective. You have to practice it. There are politicians who I do like. There are very, very few politicians who I dislike, by the way, but there are some. But there are politicians who I do like. And the temptation is always there to be as positive as possible for them. But that makes me uncomfortable, so I don't do it. And of course, it runs the risk that the politicians who I do like might think I'm against them. It is what it is. I don't necessarily care if they're going to think that little of me. Well, then this never was going to work out in the first place, because whatever or however I engage with politicians, it's not to have a personal relationship so I can get kickbacks, so I can get inside information or anything like that. It is merely, I want to have an avenue for dialogue. You have important things to say, I'll provide you a platform to say those things. I'll provide you a platform to have that discussion, but it's going to be a discussion. And if you can't stand up to my criticisms, you ain't going to stand up to the majority of the country. And somewhere along the way, politicians forgot that their job was to govern the country, not take the country's treasury for the benefit of their supporters, not take the country's treasury for the benefit of their finances, not take the country's treasury for the benefit of whatever organization sells itself out for votes. I didn't name any organization, but we have a good idea at least of the ones who technically did it very publicly and blatantly. We spoiled our politicians. We spoiled ourselves. We're like the parents that don't actually want to raise the child. We want to give them an electronic device. We want to tell them to go play with their friends. If they run into the road and get bounced on by a car, it's their fault, it's not our fault. But more importantly, we want to reward politicians for the wrong things. And I think that's why you have certain politicians like the one who decided to accuse parliamentary staff, jump out of professionalism and behave in a manner that was frankly unnecessary, unprofessional. And given how that party has operated, both parties have their own unique faults, by the way. But given how the UNC has operated, I have seen enough to know they don't do enough background work. They don't do enough homework at times. I remember when they were weighing in on the debate for Tobago autonomy, and they were calling for consultations because there weren't enough consultations. Let's not forget, who is their friends in Parliament right now, right? Tobago politicians, Tobago MPs. I remember when then PDP deputy political leader at the time said, we are sick and fed up of consultations. It wasn't the PNM that said that. It was essentially the organization that you are allied with in Tobago now. Because the UNC didn't do their homework on what the political opponents of the PNM in Tobago were saying with regards to autonomy. So they go into Parliament and essentially say something that contradicts someone on their side because they didn't do enough homework. The Prime Minister goes off what seems to be half-baked after Barry Padarath, Minister of Public Utilities, goes off half-baked. This is something to sort out behind closed doors. We're not supposed to see. We're not supposed to see. They're supposed to be, listen, if it's one thing about the TTPS, they love to handle things behind closed doors. But the moment you start to put it out there that you don't have faith in parliamentary staff, you are attacking the very foundation of our democracy. And you're doing so for a reason that, quite frankly, is not good enough. Because you do not exhibit the understanding of the process enough to inspire confidence that your analysis of the reason why what is happening, you perceive to be happening, is what you say it is. It comes across as people who complain about something that they don't understand and they don't know how to identify what is actually going on, so they just misinterpret everything from the start. And you make one error, all your decisions after that are mistakes. And they made more than one mistake over that incident, by the way. And it was one of the most blatant and professional moments in Parliament that I've ever seen, coming from a head of government business who has blatantly undermined his own presiding officer, the Speaker of the House, on more than one occasion. On more than one occasion. But it's fine. It's fine when he does it. Somehow it's magically fine when he does it in the same instance that the opposition is doing it. Because how dare the opposition stay standing while the speaker is standing? How dare the opposition stay speaking while the speaker is speaking? Oh no, that's not the argument he was making. The argument he was making was, we need to override the Speaker of the House like the opposition. That's the argument he was making. So, let's be frank, it's not my job to cover up the inadequacies of our parliamentarians. I didn't do that for Faris Awari. I didn't do it for Colin Mimbert. I didn't do it for Fitzgerald Hines. I gave some leeway to Nyan Gaspi-Dolly as Minister of Education and Terence Singh as Minister of Health. If you want to disagree with that, that's fine. A lot of people do. I didn't necessarily extend that leeway to when Nyan Gaspi-Dolly was complaining about what school wasn't ready for the new term, almost, the 1st September she had a chance to speak as opposition. I was like, hold on there, buddy. Let's pump them brakes. No, I didn't necessarily agree with her then for that, because I expected her to know better, but I've called out Dr. Keith Rowley for things he's done and said. I have raked him over the proverbial coals for the meritless situation, which I will never forget, ever. One could argue I might have been beating that dead horse too much. Not a lot of people still talk about the whole meritless fiasco. I do, because I look at that and I see something that has affected the TTPS in a negative manner up to today. That don't mean that the UNC can go to the toilet and it ain't gonna smell. Just because I had criticisms to say about the people on the other side of the line. Why? Why do I have to pick a side? Which is very funny, because people say they want the truth and they want objectivity and they want people to do the right thing, and then they turn a blind eye to the people on their side. Because when their side wins, all their supporters win. Or at least that's the hope. When their side wins, their area wins. When their side wins, some of them think this, their race wins. Why am I supposed to be a part of that? If we want to espouse these high-minded principles and then want to practice them in a limited capacity, or not put in the work to understand the reason why these things are values to be cherished, values to look up to, values to be a guiding light. It's not, it's an easy decision, oh, chocolate or vanilla. No. If it's too easy, if your ethical questions are too easy, unless you are some unique person that has this incorruptible character, be honest with yourself. Those types of people are maybe, I don't know, very few in a generation, if there are any at all. Unless you're one of those, it ain't gonna be easy to be principled. It's just not. Everyone's own life experience should inform them of this directly, no matter how minor. Everyone has life experience when you have decisions to make, and you don't always make the most ethical decision because you have practical considerations, right? But if we want to talk about how our politicians this and the ethics that and principle this and objectivity and transparency and blah, 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 blah. If we want to, because the politicians throw the buzzwords out like if it's water, like if it's candy to children. And we say, yes, yes, look, see, they said the words. That must mean they believe in them and they practice them and they execute them in everything they do. No. Because we turn a blind eye to all of the lackings. Because we selectively have standards. Because we want to make easy decisions. Truth is not easy. Getting to the heart of an issue and treating with it properly and dealing with all of the pushback and the kickback and the corruption is not easy. Being the one lone voice of truth in a system that has a lot of loopholes and corruption is not easy. We underestimate how hard it is, and then reward the ones who break the rules more than anything else, and then wonder, why is it that our country is so corrupt? Why is it that Trinidad is not a real place? And every other public servant we meet seemingly wants to dig out our eye. in part because things are so bad, we just paint everything with a broad brush. It's not that all public servants are corrupt or half of them are corrupt, but enough of them are corrupt that it seems to Joe Public they're all corrupt, although now magically for UNC supporters they ain't going to be corrupt. Just like how before the election for PNM supporters they ain't going to be corrupt. And the solution is not, well, I just need to get my side in power so all the negativity doesn't happen to me. That's not a long-term solution. That's just playing ping pong with foolishness. That's just playing tennis with who gets to be corrupt today. If that's the way you want to live, that's fine. Don't call in or send comments or talk to people in your everyday life on the street corner, at the rum shop, in a social gathering about high-minded ideals that you're not willing to follow because it takes work. Truth takes work. Truth is not just what you think is true. Truth is not just what makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. Truth is not just what sounds good. Truth is not just whatever gets you the most money from the government. Truth is not just whatever gets you the most tax breaks. Truth is truth. The fact of the matter is, we're gonna, at this rate, reach a point where, for the country to move forward, austerity measures would have to be on the table. Because we're wasting time in trying to get to solutions. What we get are half-baked political agendas, which do just as much harm to the overall economy as it helps their supporters and financiers. The very same financiers who want to operate a certain way, but then look at the economy or the economic environment they find themselves in and don't want to reinvest. They only want to reinvest when government has projects and to some extent guarantees the money. They don't want to risk their own money on private ventures, except for hoteliers. I don't know what it is with hotel investments. There's so many other industries we probably could use private investment, particularly food production. But apparently, no, not good enough. But somehow, the hotel industry is, I don't know where they see these returns coming from. It's not like most hotels in Tobago are not under some strain, including the government-run ones that they want to sell off. That's obviously, I don't know about you, but apparently to investors, that's a sign of a healthy industry that's highly profitable, right? When people want to sell off assets. Outside of that, we don't have the investments. Not that we would like. People aren't opting to come here. Our own people are not opting to put their money here. Why? Because the politicians rather listen to the financiers, whether it is right or wrong, because everybody can't see beyond 2 inches in front of their face when it comes to policy, right? They want all the short-term game, from the common man to the rich man. And then they want to say, I don't understand why things are so bad. And that's why you have a government to look beyond the short-sightedness and the selfishness. That's what it's supposed to be there for. But they're beholden to whatever section of voters to appease and whatever section of financiers to appease. Instead of governing the country. But it's fine. It's fine. Only the other side has financiers. Only the other side has unrealistic expectations from their voter base. We don't. No, we're better than that. And yet, what are the results? What are the results that politicians could point to say, look at the good things we did? I have news for you. The airport in Tobago, like the hospital in Couva, is not that big of an accomplishment. Because assets allow you to cut ribbons and take photos. Fixing the economy, those maneuvers ain't doing that. And now look, look at the boast that the Minister of Finance had in his mid-year budget review. Look at what he boasted on and then realize there was little positive to say. The reason why I brought up the hotel as an example of investment is because that was the only one he had. With all that staff, that's the only one he could put forward. If there were more he could have put forward, he should have, because one hotel alone in the current economic environment, as the backdrop to the current tourism industry environment, one new hotel alone, that's not that impressive. And then look at the examples he gave with regards to how government grew revenue. Taxes, 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 more taxes, fees, taxes, fees, taxes, more fees, and taxes. With little framework or explanation to show how extracting money from the citizens is going to be mitigated, how the potential negative consequences are going to be managed. None of that, because we don't actually have in-depth thinking with regards to leadership. The budget was no greater in terms of sophistication or innovation than the previous budgets. We traded one condiment for the other. We traded the ketchup for the mustard. Not everybody likes mustard, I get it. But the problem is it was a cheap ketchup, and it's a cheap mustard. And you're thinking, why you don't like mustard? Mustard is nice. Yes, a nice mustard is nice. A good mustard is nice. A good mustard made from high quality ingredients, where the chef is ensuring quality control, that's nice. Some cheap budget mustard that you just want to throw out there because you think mustard is the best thing ever and you don't care how low the quality is, I don't want to eat that slop. So, forgive me if I'll continue to do my job, because my job on some level has never been defined by anybody else but me. WSN has not told me this is what it has to be. They gave me a general outline, a general framework, but I fill in the specifics with regards to my commentary, with regards to my analysis, with regards to my opinion. And to be fair to the station, it's the same thing. Once the government changed, the questions were now for the new administration. Same questions. Why are things like this? What is going on here? Explain that. In the same way, no different. No agenda. Don't want to undermine for the sake of undermining. It is essentially, though an oversimplification, a pursuit of truth. I go where the situations lead me, where the evidence points to, where the most likely outcomes might lie. And what is opinion, I'll say is my opinion, and what is fact, I will point to as fact, and I will leave it up to you to draw your own conclusions. You could disagree, you could agree. If you disagree, call in and say why, so we can have the conversation. Because one of the things that the politicians has beautifully convinced the population not to do is ask too many questions. They are the Pied Piper. We are not just children, we are lemmings, following them not just out of the town but off a cliff. Do not question them. Never question them. We must believe that their words are sacred. Why? Why can't I question that? Because at some point we forgot what the true dynamic is. Every 5 years they apply for a job. And every 5 years we select who gets the job. We are not the servants. We are not the peasants to their nobility. They are the servants. We are the employers. They provide a service. We provide the employment. They don't have those jobs without us. They're not our dear leader. They're not our great leader. They're not our monarch. As the Prime Minister herself said, this is a democracy. Now forgive me for getting upset when both the political leadership and the population seem to forget that this is a democracy and act in a manner contrary to the facts that the Prime Minister herself laid out. It is almost as if we hate our own freedoms when they are practiced, because how dare I have my own opinion. And if your opinion is better than mine, come correct with facts and logic and reasoning and hit me with it. Because I don't claim to be right all of the time. But don't come with that weak nonsense about I'm just a P&M plant or a P&M bubbly. You haven't grown up past the age of 12? You still in primary school? No. If you want to be serious about life, do things seriously. They say no schoolyard fight. This is a serious conversation. I don't have much time to suffer fools. I pity the fool that thinks that's good enough, because it's not. Because if it was, we wouldn't be where we are. And if you think we're in a good place, then I pity the nation. Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll actually get into some stories this morning. Stay tuned. This is Talking from the WSN. We'll be right back after this.
Trinidad and Tobago, get ready for a musical explosion of freedom, culture, and pure steel band magic.
Featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus their talented youth bands.
Get ready for Generations of Steel,
The ultimate celebration of our national instrument.
featuring 5 of the nation's super bands, plus the talented youth band.
Experience the power and passion of Desperados,
Shell Invaders,
Massey Trinidad All-Stars,
First Citizens Supernovas,
and the pride of the South, Fun Play. Saturday, July 11th.
at the iconic Grandstand, Queen's Park, Savannah.
And hear this one. First 800 tickets sold. Admit 2 buses on 1 ticket if bought by Saturday, June 27th.
Presented by Super Panman, Dingleston and Friends.
Supported by CCNTV 6, The Express Newspaper, and I-95.5 FM.
Generations of Steel, the biggest pan event after Panorama.
Bill and Ruth fell in love with the Benjamin Moore color Dry Sage, but they tried to match it using another brand's paint.
I mean, it's close enough.
Almost identical, really. Yeah, there it is.
Never trust another paint to be a Benjamin Moore color.
So once your sugar is not controlled, it causes changes in the blood vessels in the back of your eyes. It basically makes your blood vessels more leaky. And it happens on a stage process where the smaller molecules start to leak, then the intermediate, and then the larger ones. Larger means we have come to a bleed.
Knowing how to tell authentic is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Find it, match it, search it. Step 1. Find the style number on the tag. Step 2. Match the style number inside the jersey with the number on the tag. Step 3. Search it. A quick Google search of the style number will verify the jersey is authentic when the search results match the jersey being searched. Don't be fooled by counterfeit jerseys. Before you buy, remember to find it, match it, search it.
Fan Zone, 2 locations nationwide. Center City Mall, Chaguanas and Movie Town, Port of Spain. Nationwide delivery available.
In this day of stay-at-home and work from home, home has never meant more than it does today. Whether you're looking to buy, rent, or build your new home, now is the time to get going. Gittins & Gittins real estate agents are here to take you to that place of your dreams. Let us take you home. We help you find that rental to rest along the way, or journey with you to find your home destination. Investors and commercial enterprises too, call us and we'll walk the distance to place your business in just the right location. Owners, leave the headaches to us. We'll find your tenants or buyers while you stay at home. We'll even manage your property at your bidding. Anything real estate, come home to Gittins & Gittins Real Estate. Call us at 760-3280 or 747-1220 or visit us at 16 Fifth Street in Woodbrook.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, The Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The home of Caribbean content is growing and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Are you driven, ambitious, and ready to earn? WESN, the content capital, is expanding, and we're looking for dynamic media sales executives to join our team. Sell powerful advertising solutions across television, digital, and social media platforms, and help brands tell their story. If you have strong communication skills, a passion for sales, and the drive to succeed, join WESN today. Send your CV to marketing at wesncc.com or WhatsApp 68-61662 and start building your future.
I'm back here and talking about the WSND Content Capital, and there are a few stories to get to. Don't know if I'll get through to all of them. Maybe one of the things I should say before I get into the heavy stuff, some cleanup. One, there is a situation where Tobago is supposed to get direct flights from Toronto, Miami, and Guyana. I'm not entirely too sure about the utility of direct flights from Guyana, just because I don't expect Guyanese people to necessarily, if they want to go on vacation, would they necessarily want to go to Tobago? Now, I could be wrong. I personally don't understand the whole phenomenon of people living in the Caribbean going on vacation on other islands in the Caribbean. Now, Tobago is different because it's domestic one, and Tobago is relatively cheap, all things considered. If you think Tobago is expensive, granted, you go Magdalena or Cocoa Reef, that's a different story. But if you think Tobago is expensive, I mean, Up the islands, it's potentially more expensive, right? But Toronto, Miami, that's where you could, one, yes, facilitate diaspora technically, but also two, those are major airports where you could potentially get markets or grow markets. The question is, are you going to do the groundwork with regards to marketing? So they are looking to, but I think the problem is the marketing might be limited to the flights and not to the tourism product of Tobago, and to some extent you could take advantage of the extension Trinidad and Tobago. There's also a report that Navy SEALs to help fight crime. This is the headline. I think, here's the thing. And first of all, the Prime Minister apparently has disclosed that there are currently SEAL team members. I believe it's more support staff, so it's not really SEAL team members, but it could be an advanced party. Any country handling logistics for a large deployment of SEAL teams to Trinidad and Tobago. For a government that doesn't want to reveal things to the public, this is a hell of a thing to reveal. You know, one of the advantages for the SEALs when they come into a new location to conduct operations, that initial element of surprise when whoever it is they're conducting the operations against doesn't see them coming. Apparently, the Prime Minister seemingly doesn't care about that tactical advantage. We could just throw that away. Long and short is this, because there's not necessarily a lot of information of what it means, but we need to stop considering transnational narco trafficking as a domestic issue. First of all, it's not domestic, it's transnational. And second of all, we need to stop thinking, oh, it's crime, it's domestic, it's police. Latin America has used paramilitary forces and military police, or just outright the military, to combat drug cartels for a long time. And Europe is starting to more or less do the same. Because the problem is that severe. Because at the end of the day, when the cartels or the transnational organizations have enough resources to compete with law enforcement in terms of firepower, and of course they are more willing to break the law, whereas we have expectations that law enforcement operates within the boundaries of the law, then you get a problem where what should be advantages for law enforcement, now they'll be lucky if they break even, while still having to deal with the areas that they were naturally disadvantaged. So I don't have an issue with an American military presence. There's a report, and apparently another boat was hit, right? I don't have an issue with that. That said, I do wish we would do things a little bit more. You can have military operate a little more carefully, with a little slight variation to the rules of engagement, so it's not just looking like you had to kill them all and let God sort it out. All right, now let's go to, I guess, and I did not see this coming. I didn't. But to be fair, I wasn't paying attention to the radio appearance that led to this story. Christopher Samaru, father of Justice Samaru, was apparently on a Father's Day program on Sunday, and he made a statement. And the statement is, to be fair, well, it's very direct. It's very honest. I don't necessarily think it's very literal. And it is what it is. So, according to reports, he said, this is the report, expressing deep anger for police. To me, quote, to me, they don't exist anymore. That means my only hope is the justice system, which I have 50-50 on, that. And the other thing I want to say is that, left it up to me, now I just talk in my mind, left it up to me, I will get a gun, and every policeman I will see, and you could fill in the blanks after that. So now, apparently, the police decided they wanted to question him. They wanted to question him, and yes, technically, what he said was wrong. Let's just get out of the way right now. What he said was wrong because it is encouraging escalation. Whether he means, and I believe he doesn't mean it. I believe he doesn't mean to encourage escalation. But again, similar to how I cannot control how people interpret what I say. ASP Arun yesterday couldn't interpret how people interpreted what he had to say. Mr. Samaru is not a public figure. So that is the caveat that we have to remember. I am technically a public figure, right? I barely qualify as a public figure, barely. ASP Arun is a mid to senior level police officer, as well as a media ambassador. He is a public figure. So of course, it comes with the territory. Mr. Samaru Sr., Christopher Samaru, is not a public figure. And he said what was on his mind. And it is technically, just like technically it was wrong, saying what's on your mind is not always the right thing to say because of the implications of what it could mean down the line, right? Because certain people might want to take that as motivation to do the wrong thing. But he did try to give the disclaimer. I'm just saying how I feel. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing on that one, right? Let me get I just talk in my mind. He's expressing his emotions, his raw emotions. He's expressing not only his anger, but his distrust of the system. And he's expressing what is very human, and let's be frank now, the emotions in the moment are very human, very understandable. We all wish we could right the wrongs by just wiping the slate clean, whatever that means, right? Particularly when it comes to violent acts, we wish we could fight back. That doesn't mean we do it. That doesn't mean we have a whole set of vigilantes trying to pretend they're Tony Stark or Bruce Wayne, you know, buying a gun and seeking trouble. We don't have a lot of that, right? But of course, especially if you're the victim of a crime, I would imagine you fantasize about being able to confront your attackers, you know, every day, to deal with them in whatever way your fantasy deals with them. You don't do it. That's the difference. Doing it, acting on it, that's when you get to the realm of you're wrong. Having the emotions of anger and wanting, maybe not vengeance, but to some extent, look, people have the desire for vengeance. The desire for vengeance is not wrong. It's acting out on that desire. It is replacing the concept of justice with vengeance. It is retaliation for the sake of your anger. Actually carrying it out. That's wrong. And I would argue that the police, this is a little bit trickier than the protests, by the way. Because with the protests, I saw very little gain for them interrupting or intervening in that situation. There's very little to gain. Again, we are not currently starting a policy agenda of enforcing all our laws. In this situation, it's trickier because it's one thing for someone to have a very small march tacked on to another march, a very small protest action. It's another thing to have someone say anything that could be construed as encouraging violence. That the fact that it was directed to the police is actually secondary. It was bad enough that it technically encouraged violence. I don't think it was his intention for that encouragement. I don't think it's his intention. And again, if the reports of what I read of what he said are wrong, I apologize, and I am more than happy to be corrected. But I'm assuming it to be true. I've seen it in more than one report. I had to dig a little bit. He said things that was just him, I believe, venting. But venting like that in the public, on a broadcast, it's one thing to do it in the privacy of your own home. It's even, you can even maybe do it in a rum shop, in a public setting, but a broadcast is different. It's mass media. And the risks of these things now amplify and multiply. And I do believe Mr. Samru understands that he went to the police himself to talk about it. The thing is, I get it. The police, you can't just, you know, it's not so simple as to just let it go. But the flip side is this. Does anyone really think, and I mean, technically, yes, the possibility always technically exists, but does anyone really think Mr. Samru is trying to encourage sedition? Or was he just speaking with a profound sense of grief? Because it is one thing, think about it. It's one thing to have to bury a family member to violence. It's another thing to have to bury your child because they died a violent death. It's then, you could go a step further to say, it is challenging knowing that your child died to police. And we've had people in that situation before. But I don't know if we've had a lot of people that were able to see their son's last moments in detail, where their son didn't have a gun in his hand, didn't swing at a cop, didn't try to run one over with his car. He had his hands up. Now, take all of the guilt or innocence, what they did, what they didn't do, why they was running, take all of that out of the picture. Put yourself in Christopher Samru's shoes. I saw my son with his hands up. Then I saw him die. For a father to see that, not just hear a story, not just get an account, not just get a he said, she said, not just have questionable circumstances. He saw it. I don't know what that would be like. I have nothing to compare it to. Nothing. I don't want to know. I don't ever want to know what that would be like. I pray the rest of us never knows, and I expect or suspect Mr. Samru prays for that as well. I won't be surprised if he would basically tell anybody with an earshot, you don't want to know what this feels like, and I pray you never do. One of the things that Ashraf always says, policing is more than just the hard measures. And I think this is another situation when the police potentially might have dropped the ball. Not everybody's going to know what Mr. Samru said because the reports of his arrest don't include those statements, assuming they are correct. Not everybody knows what Mr. Samru said, and even if they did, they still wouldn't care. Because at the end of the day, and I brought this up at the very beginning, you have a fundamental issue here. The fundamental issue is the police have a situation that makes them appear very untrustworthy. And then are attempting, seemingly, to interdict with actions brought against them on the basis of how trustworthy we are supposed to have them. So this is a rock and a hard place. I get that. I understand that. The problem is it feeds into the negative perceptions. And it's questionable if the police understand the balancing act. And it's not easy, to be fair. There's no book on how to deal with a situation like this. There's no manual, right? I would argue experienced officers should know better, and if they don't, that's how you get fired off of senior positions, to be honest. But this is tricky. It's even tricky to fully assess how well the police are handling this situation. How bad is it? How good is it? We could say generally. I could disagree with things. I could say I think it looks bad. But at any day, it's not as though my words carry weight in the court of law or any sort of scientific paper on the issue, right? But the problem is the police action is further eroding trust and confidence, regardless of their intentions. That the police need for us to trust them, but the problem is the whole situation started off with an incident that eroded the trust. It's a very difficult situation to be in because their defense is trust us, we're the police. But the argument is we don't trust you, you're the police. So now we have an old man that buried his child. And I have to ask the same thing. What did you accomplish? Yes, you sent a message, don't say things like that. Did you need to conduct a search in his house? Did you need to detain him? Now, he did technically volunteer himself. So we don't know if the police would have arrested him or not. He went up, because I assume he probably knew in hindsight, all right. Now, they say that the clip was cut, and it's also said that the whole interview has been taken down, and I have not time to find it, right? But did you have to deal with it this way? Because we are getting closer and closer to the point where no one is willing to give the police the benefit of the doubt. In many ways, when the Express had a social media post with the expectation that the officers were going to be arrested and charged, that was the Express ironically giving the police, might not have been the most accurate assessment of the situation, but I imagine that's them giving the police the benefit of the doubt. At least in some way. But we're slowly getting to a point where the institution, it looks bad now, it's going to look worse. It's going to look worse. It's going to potentially get to the point where there's no longer any pride wearing the uniform. And the population will soon start to look at police at best like how they view politicians, except none of the police are a political party. So there's no subsection of the population that's going to view them in a positive light. They're going to probably look at the police like how they look at politicians that they view negatively. At worst, they're going to look at police as though they're gangsters. Some people do that already, by the way. Because the trust and confidence is not just eroded, but is continuing to be eroded. Because it is reducing more and more, because it's losing more and more. this situation actually shouldn't be that big of a deal. Again, he said something he shouldn't have said. He went in, he turned himself in to speak to the police. It's not necessarily going to be interpreted that way in the court of public opinion. I think part of it is, I wonder how many people, I mean, I myself on some level have done it, right? We see the video, we see the shooting, we see how bad it is. Now, from my point of view, I then see the subsequent response by the people in charge. I see how bad that is from my vantage point. I still technically go through life on a daily basis, you know? Not necessarily an expensive life, but within my means, still try to enjoy, buy food that I might like to eat, not necessarily what I wish I could buy. You know, still go through my day, read things for my enjoyment, watch things for my enjoyment. Of course, at times, learn new things as well. Part of the job, keep up with the demands of the show. You know, I have gone through my life mostly as normal. I'm not saying as normal, like if I ignored it, but the fact of the matter is I saw a man die on a video. And it's not about who's to blame. The point is, the questions are still hanging. The concerns are still there, regardless of who you want to point fingers at. It's still an open-ended situation. It's still an unresolved issue. And it's not something that makes me happy. But I fear that for the most part, myself included, we have gone on with our lives. And it's almost like if it's like, well, you know, police killed a guy under questionable circumstances Tuesday. I wonder what's going to happen next week. Trinidad is not a real place. And because of that, we don't really know how to treat with it. We don't know how to treat with people who are upset. We don't know how to treat with people who want to protest as a society, not just the TTPS or the government. And then the people involved in the situation, they don't even necessarily know how to express themselves because we don't know. We have lived a laissez-faire life. We have lived a carefree island life. You know, Trinity time, why so serious? It ought to be so serious. You know, etc., etc., etc. But at some point in a country's development, in a country's life, you're going to get hit with challenges. And it's not all earthquakes and COVID and foreign wars and the price of gas plummeting. No, it's going to just be things that happen that we do to ourselves. Because with a population of 1.4 million, there's always the chance of something going wrong. And no one has to have the intention. It doesn't have to be intentional. It might be a little bit more than an accident. So, now you see the limitations of how we've lived as a society. We don't know how to deal with these situations well. And that lack of experience or understanding is coming back to haunt us. And again, it's not just the police I'm talking about now. I'm talking about society. How to deal with the grief, how to deal with the concerns, how to deal with the issues. This goes in part with what I was talking about with regards to our politics. because we don't know how to deal with situations that are as severe as this. And again, it's not about guilt. When I say severe, I don't mean, oh, the officers are automatically guilty. No, the situation is one where a man dies on camera with his hands up, and the trust and confidence in the criminal justice system is being eroded due to the fallout, regardless of whose fault it is. The results are what I'm talking are severe. We ain't even get to how we got here. We don't know how to handle it. So, things that should not be done, therefore are done. Things that the commissioner and the minister and the prime minister should not say, they say. Things that Mr. Samaru should not say, he said. And the thing is, as I say, democracy is not easy. Democracy is advanced human life. That's why there is a subsection of humanity that thinks we need to go back to communism. Good luck with that. One could argue socialism only works because capitalism makes the money. And the more socialist you get recklessly, the worse off your economy is. Look at Scandinavia. The models, everybody was like, look, we just need to be like them. Look how great they are, and all of their social programs and their quality of life and how the people are living. Right, and now it seems like the bubble started to burst there a little bit. And I'll say capitalism is the greatest thing since sliced bread. Or rather, not under the context that you normally say that. Capitalism could be the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's still not perfect. And then alongside capitalism, which is the free market, comes democracy, which is freedom of choice, with regards especially to who governs the country. And the issue with both, in part, is a lack of information. Free market theory works, and the basis of the theory, not the practical execution, the theory is perfect information. With perfect information, consumers will seek out their best interests. And that is how it works in theory. The reality, of course, is you have different corporate entities with their marketing, different things that are advertised to encourage consumer behavior down a certain direction, to encourage consumers to buy certain products. The American breakfast. Think about it. A lot of people, family members of mine included, think the American breakfast is a proper breakfast, right? It's not too dissimilar to an English breakfast, to be fair. But when you look at the breakfast meals in England and America, it's not like everywhere around the world this is what breakfast is because it has to be this. Because it has to be eggs and bacon and sausage and toast and pancakes and waffles and cereal. Asia doesn't eat like that. I suspect the Middle East and maybe Africa doesn't eat like that. We assume what it's supposed to be without actually understanding why. And when you don't understand why, you're going to run into problems. Because you're going to run into challenges that doesn't fit your cookie cutter ideals that you just managed to get by with for however long. Because the world is not going to remain stagnant, so the solutions of yesterday are going to remain effective today and tomorrow and the day after that. We can't just assume what is correct. We can't just assume these politicians are nice. It's democracy. We need to figure it out for ourselves. We need to say, oh, what else could breakfast be? Maybe I might like something different. Maybe something else might be healthier for me. Maybe I shouldn't just have bagel and cream cheese. Maybe I shouldn't just have toast and bacon. Maybe I should seek out more. The free market depends on perfect information. Democracy depends on seeking out information. If you rely on politicians to tell you what the truth is, then you will eventually be fooled. And obviously, yes, you're not going to know everything. You're not going to be able to get perfect information. But if you rely too much on politicians to tell you, hey, this is what the truth is, believe in me, trust in me, and you go, yes, yes, it's not long before somebody, because again, you don't have the same politicians forever. And some would argue our founding politicians were already starting off on a bad foot, right? So whether it's from the very beginning or somewhere down the line, a politician will figure out, these fools listen to everything that I say. I could tell them the sky is red and they would believe me. I could steal and they wouldn't notice a thing. Democracy depends on seeking information at the very least. In theory, you could theory craft it with perfect information, but it depends on us having information. Same thing with free market capitalism. And when we are unwilling to engage in the system fully, to carry out our end of the deal, our personal responsibility for our decisions, we get what we get. And there's a certain amount of immaturity in our nation. And you might say, well, we're young, of course we're going to be immature. Hey, the Americans wrote their constitution on effectively year one. Day one. And as far as I understand, and I could be wrong, they weren't necessarily old men with a ton of world experience. They were relatively young. They were old, maybe for their time, relatively young. And the decisions they made in the beginning is the foundation of the country that we see today. Whereas, what do we say? The decisions we made in the beginning is the foundation of our problems that we see today. And we could make a direct line to our founding and some of the problems we have now. It's not quite what's going on in America. The problems that they have today, it's not based on a bad foundation. We're not the same. We don't have the same issues. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. It's not like we're lesser than because of it. So stop trying to construe some sort of inherent value in these types of talks. We have issues. We're an immature country that acts immature. We're an immature country that acts immature, that isn't necessarily doing anything to grow up. So, of course, now when something like this happens, this is not just gangsters killing gangsters. This is not just somebody shot at the police, so we shot back. This is a much more complex issue with a lot more complex emotions. Because like I said, it's one thing for you to hear that your son, who may or may not have been involved with nonsense, ended up dead after a shootout with police. That's one thing. We've heard that story before. But to see it recorded and all, not necessarily thankfully, and all the gore and everything, but to see a recording of your son's death, and you see his last moments, and you see his last actions, or at least almost his last actions, and the narrative doesn't match up, and he dies in a manner that anyone would say, shouldn't this, I don't know what the rest of you, I think this is a reasonable question. Shouldn't this have been preventable? Was this necessary? This doesn't look necessary. Killing him doesn't look necessary. We will never understand how Christopher Samru feels. But we also don't understand what to do with a man in that position, what to do with his feelings. And his feelings, while no one else except maybe, well, let me not go there. Very few people will know what Christopher Samru feels. Very, very few. That doesn't mean that there aren't other people who feel something too. And on some level, it's not all on the police. At some point, the problem grows beyond their ability. Because it's not their job to do all of this, to be fair. It's not, right? At some point. A lot of it is still under the responsibility of the Commissioner of Police, but at some point it goes beyond. Because at some point it's an issue not just now about the incident, not just about the law. It's an issue about public sentiment. It's an issue about public perception. It's an issue that could tear at the very fabric of our society. So at some point we need leadership to explain to us, to guide us, to point us in a direction of healing, to mitigate the mistrust, to mitigate the negative emotions, to try to curtail them, to try to massage the issue in a transparent way, in a good faith way, but to throw influence on it nevertheless, to ensure that our society is not torn apart. We might not tear ourselves apart on this issue, but this will set the seeds, lay the groundwork for follow-up, for another time, for a second event where we haven't healed from the first one, and we won't be ready and we won't be able to deal with the second one, because the people involved in the second one will then say, we saw what happened the first time, it's happened again, it's gotten worse, are we going to sit by and let this happen? And to be honest, all of this is unnecessary, all of it. But without leadership, if we're going to act like we're a ship without anybody at the helm, what do we need these elected officials for? We have a money line. Caller, good morning, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Sean.
Morning.
Good topic. I sit down there and I listen to you, and you know everything just flashing back. So I telling myself, I could imagine, you know, when he put up his hands and the police and them coming towards him with that gun, I telling myself he probably died with his eyes open. Because when you see this bazooka, that is my name of the gun, I give it that name. When you see that big gun coming towards you, boy, and you sit down in that car, you tell yourself, oh God, I will put out my hand for them to see my hands in the air already. He put out his hands, put up his hands in the air, and they coming towards him. They didn't come towards him like they didn't want to shoot him. They come in and bullets flowing one time, boy. I watched that thing. And then when the bullets keep on flying through this man's stomach to his body, and the bullets finish in that officer gun. The officer placed the gun around his neck, because you know that long gun now, it have a string or whatever, and he placed it on his neck, right? And he pulled out the small shotgun from his waist and he started shooting. I sit down and I watching this thing, boy. I say, oh God, to myself, I say, the bullet finishing that big one. Oh God, you take the small one now. and I watching. You know, that bring back, that come back fresh in my mind again. You going through with all these things, eh? You shoot a man put out his hand and you still kill him, eh? Not one bullet, not two bullets, but many bullets killed that man. I could imagine that man in his grave now, boy. Eh? I just sit down and just imagine what the family going through. Now, when somebody dies, you can't forget that thing, especially the person. If you know the person, you know, no matter what circumstance or what that person do, remember that is a human being, and that's your family. You will always remember that. But that death, I don't know how to call that death, boy. Oh God, I don't know. I don't know what to say again. So I am asking myself now, we as women, I as a woman, right? I want to know what could I put in my bag to protect myself as a woman, as an individual, and as a citizen of this country. Because crime everywhere in this country. I want to know what could I put in my bag. I can't say I put in some salt, take some salt and put it in a bag and put in my bag to protect myself. What can I do to protect myself? Because I mean, you have to protect yourself when you're going out. Yes, it's a real man with Saudi, right? It had people just watching you. Like a couple weeks ago, I was in town here and I took out my phone. Making a call or so. Right? And this man, I don't know where this man come out from. Right? I am minding my own business on my phone and I had 3 bags in my hand. He walk up, come and stand up close to me. Hey, good morning, moms. I don't be on the alert already because I tell myself it's my phone he want to grab and run. But I ain't stupid outside it because I hear what's going on. So I haven't be on the alert. And when I wasn't taking him on, I keep on my phone. When I see I can't take it too much, and like when I ease him down a little, I see he stand up and like he coming down. I'm trying to have a conversation with me, which I ignoring him. I ain't even want to answer, right? And then the next thing you know, I saw he walk up a little up the road, right? So I decided, no, I have to get out. I have to get out from there. That was in Charlotte. I said, I have to get out. So I get out from that situation where I was. I went over on the other side. Next thing you know, I see the man passing. He passing with some other, probably his friend or somebody he passing with. And I just turned like this and I went up the other direction. So you see, they're all over. So I am asking myself today, what can I do to protect myself? It's my phone he was after, and I know it. I went on the other side and I just continue to just think myself until I get out of the situation. Mm-hmm. You understand? It's real madness out there. So you have to get something to protect yourself. Now, if I walk with something in my bag now, and the officers and them thing and they shoot, you know, right? They might find it and they will charge me, but I had to do something. I had to walk with something in my bag. Could someone tell me what is it to put in my bag? Now, I hear you can't get mace and thing. You can't get mace and thing, so you can't walk with it. You have to get permit or some kind of thing, right? So I asked him the question this morning, because it is not easy out here. It is not easy. And what happened to the vulnerable people who don't know, the little young people? We have to protect ourselves too as women. Who will protect us? It has so much of crime, the police and them try to deal with it. They say crime up, crime down. Not crime and down, crime up. It's going up on a daily basis. What we could do to defend ourselves? That is the question I want to know. Thank you very much. The program is very interesting. I sit down here just watching and listening. Very good program as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. So, unfortunately, I think politics derailed that question. I'm not saying the PNM, started to look at alternatives in total good faith. Some of it was politics as well. And notice we don't really hear talk about what is the policy with regards to pepper spray, mace, tasers, what have you, right? Less than lethal options to defend yourself. Because the current government came in and it's like, no, empty pneumatics. So it's almost like if they want to say, forget all that. For whatever reason, right? And there might also be logistical issues and commercial issues as well. But what is interesting is, when you started speaking about that, what can I do to defend myself, the thing that came to mind was, I wondered if this might be why the commissioner does not want to give out FULs. And seemingly, the impression given, might not be the reality, but the impression given is that he rather not, and is finding excuses to not give out FULs. Because assuming what was published is true, the letter he gave to one person, the reasons that was given in that letter were ludicrous. That's my opinion. If you want to disagree with that, that's your business, right? I don't necessarily want to get into detail with regards to that letter. It's been a while. That said, I do wonder if the commissioner has very little confidence, this is pure speculation now, on the ability of the TTPS to interact with members of the public who have concealed firearms and to not have an incident. Is it because he knows at times the customer service of his officers are lacking, the judgment of his officers are lacking, and to be fair, the judgment of some members of the population, the civilian population, potentially also could be lacking. How they interact with the police and to what degree they're ready to fight with the police. So it's a two-way street on this one, right? Some of it might be the fault of the police inability to treat with a more complex situation, and some of it would be the citizens themselves. Too many of us like to play fast and loose with the rules. Too many of us want to feel because we're adults, we can do what we want and say what we want. Don't understand, that is technically not how democracy works. You still need to have laws to stay within the boundaries of. Now, the thing is, and to kind of finish off what I was saying before the caller called in, thanks for the call though, I'd just like to also highlight, it is a hell of a shame, it's a shame that we can no longer trust a good morning from a random pedestrian who we walk past apparently. I'm not saying I'm not saying you're wrong. You were very right to safeguard yourself. It's just look at where we reach. Look at where we reach. Now, as a man, I guess I have to be concerned about it a little bit less. But it's not impossible that I could be the target of similar thoughts, similar crimes, or potential crimes. But consider this. I'll get to all of the comments right after this. Consider this. Because I'm saying we don't know how to deal with things like this incident. And this incident is not just the shooting, but the aftermath of the shooting and how it's managed. We don't know how to deal with it. We don't know how to deal with a father's grief and his comments, which, you could say are irresponsible. He shouldn't have said it. How the Prime Minister's statements, irresponsible. The framing and the arguments given by the Minister of Homeland Security in the context of what just happened, irresponsible and foolhardy. There's a reason why we don't know how to handle situations like this. And ironically, I think the answer is revealed in the arguments given by the Minister of Homeland Security with regards to private citizen CCTV footage on incidents. He doesn't want it revealed. He doesn't want it disclosed to the public. And that's the point. We don't know how to deal with situations like this because in the past we never would have had the footage. I mean, you go back far enough, there never would have even been footage. The way how we deal with things are not meant to work in full transparency. If you are police and you cannot withstand the scrutiny of the public, when the public has access to video of what you did, that can't be right. Something has to be wrong. If you are acting above board, listen, we all know the saying, you can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs. The problem is not cracking a few eggs. The problem is when it looks like, and you do not have the capacity to explain it to us, that it's not a serious offense. We're not talking about how, well, one gangster decided to play Rambo and another gangster died as collateral damage, which was unavoidable. We have nothing to really prove that narrative. That is, to some extent, what some people are trying to push. I get it. Right? It very well might be the truth. We don't have body cameras to back that up. I wonder whose fault is that? Not mine. Not mine. Don't blame me. Blame your geniuses that are saying all the wrong things in this situation. We are not accustomed to dealing with transparency, about having accountability. That's why the commissioner doesn't know what to say. Because there's nothing in the history of the service to tell him what to do, at least nothing that he wants to do. Other commissioners have handled somewhat similar situations, and dare I say, with a bit more sense and grace than him. It is what it is. But as a nation, we don't deal with this that often, and we don't deal with things to this extent. So we don't know what to do. Now we're challenged. You want to, politicians in parliament want to talk about transparency? All right. Look, perfect potential starting point. For months, no one from cabinet outside of Minister Alexander spoke. For months. Junior parliamentarian, neophyte minister. That's your spokesperson. Yeah, makes sense. I see it. I see the vision. I see the lack of vision. Your lack of vision disturbs me. So, the police are accustomed to not having to explain. The police are accustomed to not having to go into detail about why they did what they did and why it's justified. The police are accustomed to saying, trust us. We did the right thing. Believe. Nothing to see here. These are not the droids you're looking for. Move along. And now a video comes out and throws all of that out the window, smashes that narrative or that concept. And what is the Minister of Homeland Security's response? Not how do I fix this situation. No, I'm going to go and start proposals about making it illegal for the public to disclose footage. Yeah, that doesn't look like you're trying to cover up anything. That doesn't look like a cover-up at all. That looks very normal. That looks very normal. Let's take the comments now, whatever order you have them set up. There are those, including government ministers, good day to you as well. There are those, including government ministers, are saying calls for justice publicly while a case is before the court constitutes judicial interference. I beg to disagree. In no way does such a call interfere with the judicial process. The judicial process itself supports a call for justice, which is demonstrated in the appeal system. Sometimes justice is not applied at the lower court and is corrected by the Court of Appeal. And also, to the commenter's point, is the calls for justice calling for a specific outcome? One could argue yes, but I would say a proper call for justice is not, you have to free her, you have to not charge her, you have to arrest the officers involved in shooting. A call for justice is, why are you not more transparent? Why is there no better explanation as to what happened? Why are you not giving us details so that we can understand? Why are you acting suspiciously? Why are you acting as if there's something to hide? Even talking about the incident, it took 4 months. I have never seen a police shooting where it took them 4 months to say, well, they had a gun. Do you understand people have already speculated that the gun might be a plant because it took 4 months for them to say they had a gun? This is pertinent to one of the other comments, but we'll get to it when we get to it. Thank you for this, by the way, because I do feel we are way too sensitive. We are way too sensitive. Justice will be derailed because people called for justice. That's like saying transparency is going to be derailed because people demand transparency. That's like saying righteousness will be derailed by those who want righteousness. Because the call for righteousness somehow will persuade people to be unrighteous. I don't know. It will encourage evil. Now granted, if the protesters calling for justice are doing so in a bad faith manner, in an irresponsible and unreasonable manner, go against the specifics of the message, not their right to display that message at all. Next comment. Referencing Ms. Phillips, who was arrested in the Labor Day March, she was not authorized. If she was invited to speak on a trade union platform, she would have been lawful, but she led a group placard and all. The thing is, Michael Anaset says he invited her. Michael Anaset says he invited her. Now, my question is, does he not have the right to invite her? If someone knows that and says that Michael Anaset didn't have the right to invite her, fine. But given where the story has progressed to, I doubt that's the case. I do believe he did have the right to do so, and now he and other trade union leaders, according to reports, that is to say, reports on what I believe are his statements, he and other trade union leaders are looking to see what legal options they have on the matter. So, unless someone could definitively show that she was not authorized, I think it's fair to say, it's subjective to some extent, but it's fair to say there's a reasonable argument she was authorized. Next comment. Please be careful any type of comments you're making on Mr. Samaru's radio statement. This matter, you are not only representing yourself, but also the wesn company. We understand the emergency. Please refer yourself as the man has been arrested. Yeah, well, was he arrested or did he turn himself in? I was under the impression he turned himself in, right? Which is an interesting situation. He was held. Well, one says detained. It starts off saying he was detained. But the lawyer said his client surrendered himself and opted to have an open discussion with the police. So you could be held after you surrender yourself, but the key point is you weren't arrested in the sense of they came and they took him. So we don't know if the police, I believe, would have actually gone out, sought him out to arrest him and take him to the station. He went to them. So, and listen, I get it, we understand the emergency and all of that, but listen, I'm not protesting with the protesters, right? Because it is what it is. I'm not looking to get myself arrested. I don't know what the truth is. I appreciate their right to protest. I appreciate how they feel, right? But I don't necessarily, I'm not 100% in line with their opinion, obviously, because I'm not protesting with them. Just like everybody else. But at the same time, this is my lane. This is my lane. And if they want to act like UK police and arrest people criticizing them, then we have a bigger problem than just me running afoul of certain police officers that can't account for their own actions. And again, we ain't talking about the guilt or innocence of the shooting. We're talking about how they deal with the fallout. Some of them I have praised. Others I have criticized. Let's see the next comment. Good day, your discourse on the misguided political thinking that pervades the society was most welcome. What to me it exposed was the failure of the education system to promote an intellectual culture over the past 40 years. Critical thinking was left to the individual to develop when it should have been nurtured in all students. Sadly, it was not, and we see the negative results today, and that is absolutely right, that is absolutely right, that is absolutely right. When I was in secondary school, there were situations, smaller in scale, I found it bewildering that my fellow classmates were not able to follow the school's line of thinking with regards to certain serious situations in terms of school guardianship of the students and the responsibilities for the students, to the parents, to society. And how, no, you can't just let students do this and you can't just let students do that. And this is Form 6. This is Form 6 we're talking about. This is not when we were in Form 2. And my fellow classmates could not understand, could not go through the process to think through. This is why the school has to have certain rules to protect the students. And you get to university and there are lecturers who try, and from what I understand, there are lecturers who don't try. And then on top of that, to what extent are we influenced by American or foreign academic ideologies? That's probably the best way I could come up to put up with it right now. And essentially, I try to tell people this for quite some time. If you're in a tertiary institution and they're telling you what to think, you're in the wrong institution. But in 2026, more often than not, a lot of the discourse on politics and, you know, where that goes with regards to religion, where that's connected and so on, and social justice issues and societal issues and stuff, a lot of people, they want to talk about what you need to think. This is the right thing. You need to think this. If you don't think this, you're wrong. As opposed to getting people, well, how to think so that you could get your own conclusion. In part because the activists abroad and the university professors for some institutions with certain agendas abroad, they don't understand. When you're right, your people will critically think their way to the correct path. But the key point is they will do so independently. So you're going to get, if it's 100 people critically thinking their way to the correct path, you'll get 100 variations of logic that will support the truth. We don't have that. We don't have that. You are very correct. And when you look at, I can't necessarily say that our tertiary institutions do this to the same degree, but when you look at what our culture is accustomed to, because a lot of people from the generations ahead of me, my parents' generations and so forth, they went primary, secondary, finished O-levels, went to work. What is our system of education, particularly primary and secondary, meant to do? And what do we see entry-level jobs do? Do as I say. Well, sorry, that's not the right analogy. It is basically, you're not paid to think. I tell you what to do, you do it. You don't tell me what you think should be done. And with regards to primary and secondary, it is, you just need to learn, memorize to pass these exams. You don't think, you memorize, pass these exams. Particularly common entrance and now SCA and O-levels. You need to learn the formulas. You're not thinking through logic of the formulas. Just learn the formulas. Just learn what to do, right? Learn the material, and you'll pass the exam. You're not so concerned about thinking through and understanding the material. Just learn it. You got to learn it. You got to learn it in time. So that education system, traditionally, you finish O's, then you get to the working world where you're paid to do, not think, at where in the development of a young person for the majority of this country's history do we develop critical thinking. Now we have more tertiary institutions, but dare I say, not every lecturer, not every program, and not every institution are equal. Let's go on to the next comment. It's democracy. I don't know if you were meaning to have a pun on demon. I'm not sure. Next comment, there seems, moving down, there seems to be an agenda to further erode the confidence in DPS for the purpose of destabilizing and fragmenting the nation. Or you could say, because I have pointed it out, where I disagree with people that then want to say you need to remove the DPP, you need the judiciary, where it gets wider. But the fact of the matter is, the TTPS, they have shot themselves in the foot. Their leadership in particular has shot themselves in the foot. And if you speak to anybody critically about it, that could properly analyze how the public communication comes across, the lack of leadership, the policies that led up to this situation, the policies that continue post this situation. Just because it looks like it could be eroding trust and confidence in police, I'm calling a spade a spade. I can't speak to everybody else. I'm calling a spade a spade. And my conversations and consultations have encouraged me in the sense of I don't think that my perspectives are that wrong. Now, here's the thing. What will further this point in the discussion is if you could say why the negative commentary against the police is wrong. And then you could say, this is why the negative commentary against the police is wrong. Therefore, because it is wrong, that means the motivation for this commentary has to be wrong. That means there's an agenda to do it. This is the, I have a feeling, I don't like it, this is what I don't like, go. It's not my job to come up with arguments to support your position. You need to have arguments to support your own position. To some extent, this might be what the previous comment with regards to critical thinking is. Because critical thinking is not just, ooh, I have a strong opinion. It is then, how do I build that opinion? How do I build the arguments, the justification for that opinion? So that when I give the opinion, it could face challenge and scrutiny. Right now, that technically cannot face any challenge or scrutiny because it is incomplete. It's not enough. You might have it, but you need to then give it. Next, moving down, if Mr. Samuel is charged with sedition, every media house must be charged for broadcasting his seditious words. Remember Christmas list. Yeah, on some level, yeah, we can't report what somebody else said. If we are going to get to that point, then you might as well just close up shop. We're not a democracy. And if that's the case, then one could argue the Prime Minister lied to CARICOM. We are just as bad as Cuba. We're getting there. We're getting there. All right, I think that's it. No, yeah, I think that's it. So, folks, I want to thank the caller and thank all the commenters. And again, I just want to reiterate the point. I might say I disagree with you. And I might be even energetic in my disagreement. But it really doesn't work, and I'll be very hypocritical if I don't say this. It's not about people agreeing with me. And I just want all the yes men and the yes women. Yes, agree with me. I am right. Oh, bask in the glory of my righteousness. No. Disagreeing with me is important. But you have to disagree with me with an argument, with a point of view, with some details, with you know, something that says this is why I think you, Sean Michael Small, are wrong. And then Sean Michael Small could do one of two things. He could say, well, this is where I disagree with that statement and the reasoning why. Or, you know, I never saw it that way. Perhaps you're right. That does happen from time to time. With that said, let me reiterate it once again. Democracy, at least for now, is our most advanced form of society, of living as a collective, of trying to form something bigger than ourselves. It's easy to do it on a small scale. It's hard to do anything on a large scale. But democracy is, so far, the best out of bad options. That doesn't mean we could rest on our laurels. We have to, in a democracy, participate, not just in our day-to-day lives, not just in the economy, but also in the democracy. And people might say there's not enough hours in a day. Unfortunately, it is what it is. The best part is, like anything, if we participated enough that things were running smoothly, then the need for participation will naturally decrease. But if we want to artificially pull ourselves away and ignore a situation, don't be surprised if it naturally worsens. So with that said, remember your allegiance to the Republic and to each other. It's not just enough to be a good citizen staying in your own lane. You also have to consider how to be a good citizen to actively promote positivity in your country and for each other. Stay safe. Don't forget, it's nice to be nice. Even at times now when things are heated, and dare I say, if the TTPS was nice, they could have done their job in all of these instances, but done it more effectively. But we'll see how things continue to unfurl, but that'll have to wait until tomorrow when we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
WESN.